everyone. Welcome today to Preschool Parade. And today we are talking about community helpers, everyone around our neighborhood who helps us in so many different wonderful ways. My name is Heidi Berteau, Miss Heidi, and I'm at the Miller branch of the Howard County Library System.
Hi everyone, I'm Miss Sylvia. I'm also a children's instructor at the Miller branch of the Howard County Library System.
And we have a guessing song for you today first to start. So you need to listen to the words of this helper song and see if you can guess who is the community helper that we're talking about. Are you ready, Miss Sylvia? You might have to guess.
I'm ready.
Okay, here's the first one. Listen carefully. Do you know who brings us mail? Who brings us mail? Who brings us mail? Do you know who brings us mail? What is that worker's name?
Is it the postal worker or a mailman?
It is a postal worker. That is someone who brings us mail. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, I have one too. Here we go. Do you know who puts out fires? Who puts out fires? Who puts out fires? Do you know who puts out fires? What is this worker's name?
Putting out fires, Miss Sylvia, is a firefighter.
You got it.
Firefighter. I love it. They are doing great. Okay, here's another one for you.
Yes.
Do you know who keeps us safe? Who keeps us safe? Who keeps us safe? Do you know who keeps us safe? What is that worker's name?
Could it be? Is it a police officer?
It is a police officer. They
Awesome.
help us safe. Nice job.
All right, here's my last one. Here we go. Do you know who makes us well? Who makes us well? Who makes us well? Do you know who makes us well? What is that person's name?
Oh my goodness. It has to be a doctor, Miss Sylvia.
Yes.
It's a doctor. They help make us
Oh.
well when we're sick and make sure we stay well too, boys and girls, right?
That's right.
All right, we have one more for you. Hopefully you'll get this one. Do you know who helps us learn? Who helps us learn? Who helps us learn? Do you know who helps us learn? What is that worker's name?
I think it's a teacher.
It is a teacher.
Yay!
Yay! They help us learn. And guess what, boys and girls? It could also be a librarian that helps us learn, just like Miss Sylvia and I, because we love to help you learn. Great job on all those helpers.
Awesome. Well, you know what? For our next activity, I have something similar, but it's with a book. And this book is called Clothesline Clues to Jobs People Do. And it's by Catherine Helling and Deborah Hembrook. And so in this book, there are different clues, and you get to guess what the job could be. So we're going to go through a couple. So it's a different way to guess and learn about different jobs that community helpers do. Okay. This one says, oven mitts, apron, recipe for stew, puffy hat and whisk. What job does he do? So I see some oven.
Oh my goodness.
And an apron and a whisk. Recipe. What do you think?
And that big hat, Miss Sylvia.
Yeah,
I don't know what that is. Is that a chef? Let's see. Oh my goodness.
He is a chef. He is awesome. Let's try another one.
Wow, I love that. They're all hanging up there, all those clues.
It's such a great clue book. All right, let's see here. So we have coveralls, tool belt, work gloves, and glue. Safety glasses, saw. What job does she do?
Oh my goodness, safety glasses. Look at that tool belt though. I see a hammer on there and some pliers and a screwdriver. Is that someone who builds things, maybe? A carpenter or something?
Let's see. That's right. She is a
Oh,
carpenter. Awesome job. Yes.
wow.
Really cool book. Clothesline Clues to the Jobs People Do. Be sure to check that one out.
I love that, Miss Sylvia. That was fun playing along with those clues.
So fun, right? All right, so moving right along, I have another book to share. And this book has a character that a lot of people are very familiar with and love. Who's that?
Oh, it's Daniel Tiger.
Daniel Tiger. This is
I
Daniel
love him.
Tiger's Neighborhood. And the book is The Helpers in Your Neighborhood. This book is by Alexandra Cassell Schwartz. And Daniel goes on a trip to his neighborhood with his dad. So we're going to see who he visits. So I'm just going to show a couple of other cool jobs. So here, Daniel goes to visit a construction site to see a construction
Wow.
worker.
And look at that hat he's wearing,
Building.
Miss Sylvia.
Yeah.
Has to
So-
keep his head safe.
Yep, that hard hat there. And they're building the different machines and equipment that they have to use, the different construction vehicles. So they're a community helper because they help us get new buildings in our neighborhood. And how about this community helper here?
Oh, that stop sign. Is that a
Yeah.
crossing guard to help you cross the street safely?
That's right. She's a crossing guard and she has the big stop sign so that we can cross the street safely and cars know when people are coming. So that's also an important job. And then the final one I wanted to show is this job here. This is an environmental services worker, and they come and pick up trash for us and recycling and take it to the places where it can be stored to help us keep our neighborhoods clean. So that's another community helper job there.
And we see them every day, Miss Sylvia, and it's so important the job they do. Next time you see one, please say thank you.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So those are just a few. There's so many other jobs in this book that Daniel gets to visit different workers. So definitely check that book out as well.
I love that. Boys and girls, so many different workers in your very own neighborhood. And we're going to sing again about some other community helpers in our neighborhood. This goes to the tune of London Bridge, and we might be showing you some of the same jobs or some very different jobs. Let's see if you recognize them. So I'm going to start. Ready? Community helpers are everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. Community helpers are everywhere. Who do you see? Who do you see, Miss Sylvia?
Here we go. I see a, sorry. So sorry. Here it comes. I see a farmer in the field, in the field, in the field. I see a farmer in the field. They grow our food.
Oh my goodness, that's so important. They grow our food, a farmer. Okay, let's see that. We grow this one. I see a carpenter with her tools, with her tools, with her tools. I see a carpenter with her tools. She builds many things. So important.
Yeah, I have another one.
Oh my goodness. I can't wait to hear.
Yep. I see the teacher in his class, in his class, in his class. I see a teacher in his class. He helps children learn.
Look at that. So important, Miss Sylvia. That is so, even if kids are not in their class right now, they're learning, right?
Yeah.
Even online and everywhere and in their own special classrooms. All right, I have one more. Let's see if you can guess. I see what is that? A truck driver.
Truck driver.
In his truck, in his truck. I see a truck driver in his truck. He brings us things we need.
Yeah.
Those are some
Truck drivers are so important. Definitely.
so important. We love that. And you know who else is important as a community worker and a helper, Miss Sylvia?
Ooh.
What about you?
Yeah.
Do something in your community. That's the name of this book. And this is by Amanda Rondeau. And it does talk in here about some of the helpers that we've already talked about, like doctors and nurses. And here's one we haven't talked about yet. She helps
A coach.
Porch. She is a
Yeah.
coach. She is a great community worker. But the most important part of this book is ideas that you can do, such as helping in a soup kitchen to help people who don't have enough food. You can have a community garden to help grow food for people who don't have enough food. Or there are many ways you can make a difference. So think about what are some things you can do so you can be a part of your community and be one of those community helpers.
Yeah. And there was another part from Daniel Tiger when he was in his neighborhood. Look at what they're doing to help their community.
They are picking up trash, so important.
Yeah. So many things
Wow.
you can do to help. Awesome. Okay. So there are a couple. There's another book. I just showed some pictures for our song. This book is called Whose Hands Are These? It's a community helper guessing book, and it's by Miranda Paul. And in this book, it shows you hands and it's more clues to guess different community helpers. So I was going to show a couple of those as well. Okay. Now, these are also some jobs we haven't talked about yet. So this is exciting. Okay. It says, taking notes. These hands are writing. Breaking story. How exciting. These hands can type or hold recorders. These hands belong to...
Oh, if that rhymes, it might be reporters. Is that reporters?
So, that's right. Look at that.
That's so important to give the news.
So
Wow.
cool. Yeah. They give us lots of information. So that's definitely a job that's important.
That's a great job.
One that I wanted to share. Oops. Yank and crank. These hands are smeared. Reach and wrench. They've disappeared. When something breaks, these hands don't panic. These hands belong to a...
Ooh, what is that word for someone who fixes cars, Miss Sylvia? Starts with an M. Mechanic.
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 That's right. Those hands belong to a mechanic.
Look at that.
Yeah, another community helper job. So, Miss Heidi kind of talked about this a little bit. How can you do something to help your community? What can your hands do? So for our activity or craft today, Miss Heidi and I were thinking about different things that we could do with our hands if we wanted to think of ways we could help others or some job or community helper activity that we would love to do. Miss Heidi, do you want to show yours first?
Okay, boys and girls, I will show you mine. And you trace your hand on a piece of paper. So here's my hand traced. It's going to be a little bit bigger than yours. And I'm holding a book because I am a librarian and I can help teach people about different kinds of books. And you know what? If you read a good book, you can do the same thing because books are important. And I just put in the fingers here, be a community hero helper, because when you're a helper, you are a hero.
That's
and
right.
I have one more that I'm going to show before Miss Sylvia shows hers because she draws a little bit better than me. But I did another hand, and this is what Miss Sylvia showed Daniel Tiger and his friends doing. if you're on a walk around the neighborhood, we can always be picking up trash and putting it away with our hands. And that is helping keep your neighborhood clean. So once
Yeah.
again, you can be a community hero. So I hope you
Yes.
choose to use your hands to help.
Yes. And so I also traced my hand and I thought about ways that I could be a helper if I wasn't working in the library, which I love to do. I also like to grow things. So I want to be a gardener and a chef so that I could grow food and then cook it for people so that they had food to eat. So that was a job that I could do to help my community. That's another activity.
Love that. So boys and girls, just get any piece of paper and
Yeah.
take your hand and you just trace around all your fingers or use a grown-up's help and then use that hand in your picture to pick a job that you would like to do to help in your community. Or think about what you might want to do when you grow up and draw about that. That would be an awesome dream to have. I have several more books just to show you all and the grown-ups. They are all community helper books that we have in our library. There's nurses tools and librarian tools. I like that one. And firefighter tools. There's so many books in this collection and they're in the guided reading section of our library. And there's a lot of them. I only am showing you a couple, but there's so many called Tools of the Trade. And if you look up community helpers, Tools of the Trade, you should be able to find all these books. So I hope that gives you some ideas of ways that you can be a helper in your community by using your hands. You've been great to be with us all today. We'll see you next time.
Bye.